Hey everyone, this is Kelly, one of your coaches from Zinni, and I am joined today with Michael Vargas, another coach on Team Zinni. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for having me here. Excited to be here and talk some good, juicy stuff with you today.
Vargas is one of our accountability coaches in our program, and he works with a ton of therapists in private practice, helping them organize, simplify, get in touch with their vision, and bring it to realization. Less tactical, more, how would you say, practical, I would say.
That was a great rhyme, by the way. Less tactical, more practical.
Yes.
Just making sure that the everyday things are done, right? It's easy to be in dreamland. It's easy to have the vision for things, but then the rubber needs to hit the road. And so that's where I come in and really help make sure that the action steps are clear. We know what's going on. If there's anything that gets in the way, if you have a thing that you've been wanting to do for the past several weeks and you haven't been able to do it, what's blocking you? And we try to get around it, underneath, above, through, all the things. And so making sure that progress is being made on what you want to do and where you want to go.
Yeah. So one of the things that you have taught in one of our programs is on the emotional phases of business. It's something we've integrated a lot in our business school as well, and in our advanced coaching program. And I think that there's, when we talk about like the stages of grief, people really love that because it helps them kind of organize or make sense of the internal landscape. And that's what I love about this emotional phases of business, is it can kind of help people normalize what they're feeling, but also see where they're at so that they can move through into other places of the phases. And so I don't know if you've experienced that as well.
Oh, all the time. It's always a nice reminder of like, oh, right, this is where I'm at right now with my business. And I also like to give a little bit of maybe a precursor, I guess. It's not just business. It's also when you're like maybe starting new initiatives or starting a new project or anything that you're trying to create and make real progress on. I think this is a really helpful mental model to keep in mind regarding how our emotions are going to be. So as Kelly is sharing here, those are the 5 phases here. And if you just look briefly on the graph, you can see it goes up, then down, and then back up again. The roller coaster of life. So keeping it really simple, you have the first phase, which is uninformed optimism. This is when we get super excited about a new project that maybe we've just learned about, or we had a dream and we're like, okay, we're going to get started on this thing. And we get just so happy about it. We're really optimistic. And it's easy to forget that we know nothing about this. Right? So it's really uninformed. This is just, I have an idea and this is going to be amazing. And so we get that high level of excitement about this thing. And it's so easy for us to get that we don't know anything about it. So that's why it's that combination of that uninformed optimism, right? Excited about this thing, but we don't know anything about it. The next phase we start going into is the informed pessimism. Right? It's fantastic. It's like, oh, the burden of knowledge has now just hit me. And now I'm having a sense of, oh, this is a lot harder than I realized. Mm-hmm. So going from that transition for when it's easy to now it becomes difficult is not always, but very often a very, very normal part of the process. So I think that this is sometimes where a lot of people get stuck. It's like, I was so excited about it, but now it's starting to get hard the more I learn about it. That's natural.
And I think sometimes that can be interpreted as, oh, then this must mean I shouldn't do it.
Very, very much so, right? It's like, oh, now that it's hard, I shouldn't. It's meant to be easy. And every successful person that I've ever spoken to, I've never heard them say, oh, the path to success was easy. This road that I never took before, I got everything right the entire way. That doesn't really I think that happens 0.01% of the time. so that this is where we start getting into the reality of things, right? We have this vision, this dream, this pie in the sky, and now we start to get into the reality of, oh, this is a lot more work. There's a lot more things I don't know. It's there's also a saying where there's known knowns, known unknowns, and unknown unknowns. And this is where you start getting to know that there's a lot that you don't know. So when we start seeing those, we start getting a little pessimistic. Like you said, it's hard, it's challenging. And then we move into the next phase as we continue this, the valley of despair. Just pure, I need to quit right now. This is never going to work. A lot of self-judgment comes in. I'm dumb. I don't know anything. I am a terrible person. The whole world is coming down upon me. This valley of despair. Again, the reason we're talking about this is that this is a very normal part of the process, right? Very, very common for people when they're constantly trying to work on things and they don't make a lot of progress to just hit that valley of despair and just feel a lot of sadness. The willingness is almost gone. You want to quit, and those are normal pieces of the pie. Now, I think this is what often happens with a lot of people in business, entrepreneurs, is they'll hit the valley of despair. They'll see something new, something interesting, something they don't know anything about, and go back to the uninformed optimism on a new thing.
It's the saving grace, it's the savior kind of thing of like, get me out of this pain. Mm-hmm. Instead of, the only way through, past pain is through it. Yes. And if you U-turn and go back to that uninformed optimism, you eventually are still going to end up in the valley of despair at some point.
Exactly. That's kind of I think one of the traps that people fall into is once they hit the valley of despair, they look for something new. I know I've done it in the past, and there are moments where I definitely want to do it. So it's a very normal thing. People don't like pain, and they want to go towards pleasure, and something new and exciting is very pleasurable. Mm-hmm. So going in that valley of despair, that's something it's hard to keep track of like, oh, I'm in the valley of despair. And it can be so helpful to know, oh, I'm in the valley of despair right now. I'm in this place where I'm trying really hard. There's not a lot of progress being made. I want to quit. I just want to burn everything down to the ground. Let me take a breath, relax for a minute, get perspective. I'm still new. I still don't know. I'm still learning. I think one of the things that helps me personally in the valley of despair is to take on the identity that I'm the learner. I'm someone who's now just learning a lot, and that's all this is. This is an opportunity to learn, and an opportunity for me to get to manage my emotions in this space.
I think when you say that, and I was thinking too, for me, it's about not being alone in it. If I'm alone in it, then I'll stay in it. But if I ask for help or I reach out, I'm more likely to move through to the next phase than if I, community support, mentorship is what has helped me out of those valleys.
I couldn't agree more. That has been so helpful for me too. And it's also nice to hear other people's stories of like, oh yeah, I went through my valley of despair as well.
Yeah.
There's this great comic strip, and it's basically there's a man with a pick in a mountain, and you see that he's been working through the mountain for quite some time, and he's at the moment where he's at the valley of despair basically, and you see that he's starting to turn around and he quits, but right on the edge of that is the diamond that he's been mining for. And I think that's something that can happen to quite a bit of us.
Yeah.
So again, everyone, when you're feeling that, I think it's helpful to take a breath, recognize you're in the valley of despair, and like Kelly shared, see what support you can get, hear other people's stories, and so on and so on and so on to get that support during that time of despair. Now, the nice thing is if we're able to push through that valley of despair, if we're able to push through that really challenging moment, this is where we start getting to informed optimism, right? So now things are starting to make sense. Things are starting to click. Everything is not perfect by any means, but now we start feeling the traction, the progress being made. We start recognizing, oh, we actually have information and knowledge. And I said recognizing, and I think this is something that us as coaches help with, is giving people perspective. I've had several clients where they're like, oh my goodness, I now have just too many clients. My schedule's booked out. This is so frustrating. And it's like, do you remember when you had barely any clients and you had no idea of how to get clients? And now you're in this space of where you have a good sense of how to get clients. And now you're trying to navigate that. And they're like, oh yeah. And it's so easy for us to forget.
There's a nice amnesia effect.
Yeah.
And
getting, I think in this moment too, to what helps create this is looking at the past and seeing the progress that has been made and recognizing, oh, I know more than I realize. I've made more progress than I realized. And so having that helps us get to the informed optimism, and that also helps drive it as well. And again, so you're learning things, now you're feeling, okay, like I'm starting to get this a little bit. I'm starting to get the hang of this a little bit. And you keep moving forward. And that's where you can start getting into the space of success and fulfillment, where you've gone through the battle, where you've traversed the plains, traversed the swamps, traversed the mountains and the hills and the valleys. Well, definitely valley for this. And you're like, okay, I have a good sense of what I'm doing. I'm where I've been wanting to be, and I'm feeling really a strong sense of fulfillment for the work that I've done.
I think some of that informed optimism is also adjusting. The uninformed optimism is a blanket kind of expectation, but with informed optimism, the expectations, the goals may shift in that space to where it's like, oh, now I know what is achievable. This idea that I thought this whole thing would bring in $1 billion. Okay, I'm seeing that that's not going to happen. And so there's a maturation, sort of, so to speak, of us internally, and our dream matures into something that is actually something that you can fulfill.
Yeah, it's getting connected to the reality of things, right? Into the reality of, oh, okay, I might not have, like you said, $1 billion business, but I realize like my business is going well where I can have time to take vacations, and it's not something I even really thought about. But now it's the way things are going, I'm seeing that as well. And so I think that is a nice part is we become more informed of the reality of the situation. We might not get everything that we thought, but I also think we get more than we also realized as well, because now it's actually right there. And then you hit the success fulfillment, you do a happy dance, and you buy yourself some ice cream.
Is that how it works?
Or at least for me, I love my ice cream quite a bit. And so we're talking about this phases. We're talking about this in business. And again, I want to reiterate for people that this isn't just business, right? This can also go to a new project. You know, you've been working on doing blogs, and you're like, okay, now I want to do YouTube videos, just for an example's sake. And you're really excited about YouTube videos. And then you go through this process with the YouTube videos and your social media presence on there. So it's not just business. It can also be different phases. Maybe I have a successful private practice. Now I want it to be a group practice. And now I'm going to go through this particular thing again and again and again. So know that anytime you start something new and you're trying to get somewhere with it, a lot of times you'll experience this as well. So just know it's not just for the business, but also on the projects and the changes that we make as well.
I'm wondering if anyone's watching is relating to this. I recommend that you share this with colleagues and friends. I think it's something that we don't talk a lot about. And it's also something that social media does not display. They show the phase one often. People are like, I have this amazing idea. And then they'll show phase 5, of like, look at what I created. But no one's talking about the messy middle and sharing what that really looks like. So for private practice owners, if you're wanting to start a group practice or start your practice or scale into things beyond the couch, there is stuff in the middle, and you will go through this many times in your business. Just when you think like, okay, I've got this practice going the way I want, something may shift, a person may resign from your team, or you need to hire someone, and then you'll go back through that phase as well. So different phases as well. So this is an undulation of wave, and the clearer that you get about who you are, and like what you said, Vargas, having that approach of like, I'm here to learn, like being open, riding those waves gets a lot easier and less likely to take you in an undertow, so to speak.
And going on what you said previously is to know that as you do this, you're going to be hitting the valley of despair. So you can proactively prepare yourself for it. You can, again, like Kelly said, make sure you have a lot of support that you're reaching out during those moments. You can mentally prepare yourself. You can send yourself an email 3 months from now saying, hey, remember when you started this and you were excited? And also remember that you knew you were going to go into this phase of despair, and you might be there now, and just know that that's a normal part of the process. Having that can also, I think, be a big help in making sure you're able to move through it, so you can proactively put things in place so that you can navigate the valley of despair without it being so despairy.
Despairy. I like that. We don't want it to be despairy. So I think, it would be nice if us as psychologists and therapists and mental health clinicians were immune to these kinds of things because we know so much about the psyche. But the truth is we're all human. And I and Miranda both said business is like your biggest personal development course you'll ever take. And this is just one of those aspects of learning to navigate these phases, identify where you're at, know that the next phase will come, and learning to honor who you are in that place so that you can move through with more ease. You can't avoid. In fact, I find that when people try to skip from uninformed optimism to success and fulfillment, usually the success is very paper thin. It doesn't lead to substantial, long-standing kind of success. It's very fragile. And so there is a muscle that is being built as you go through these phases to strengthen you as a leader and as a business owner.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that. I do think that the opportunity, in one of the opportunities in this, is the ability to build one's emotional capacity to deal with hardship, right? And we get that in our life all the time in all different ways, shapes, and sizes. I just think that this is a really, again, I do like to use the word opportunity rather than a challenge, because it is an opportunity to say, okay, during this time, who's the person that I want to be when I'm in the valley of despair? How do I want to show up? What values do I want to live while that's happening? And when that's happening, how am I treating my loved ones? How am I treating my friends, my family, and myself when I'm in this hard moment? And again, I know this is much easier said than done. And I do think it is truly an opportunity for us to get to become the person that we want to be, live the values that we want to be. Because it's really easy to be nice to everyone when you're uninformed optimism, right? You're like, I'm starting this thing, everybody, and yay. And when you're in the valley of despair and it feels like nothing's working and you feel like those waves are just hitting you again and again and again, how do you get to show up? I think that's an opportunity to feel, okay, how do I move forward on this to be able to emotionally regulate myself, to know I'm in this position and still show up for the people that I care for, and still take care of myself and give myself love and other people love in my life during this time.
Yeah.
So I know it's a challenge to view it that way. I know for me and other people, it's been very helpful to see it as that opportunity.
Maya Maria says, wow, this resonates so hard. I'm glad it resonates, and I'm glad we got to share this with you. This is something that Vargas teaches in one of our programs, and I'm really grateful for his perspective and what he brings to our coaching team, because it's not all, yes, there are like tactical things that are good to know about building your private practice, and you need an informed consent, and you need your liability insurance, and you need to know how to do documentation, all these kinds of things. But there is also the personal development side and the opportunity, as you say, Vargas, to grow and to become more true to who we are, learning to regulate our nervous system, learning to be more in tune with all parts of ourselves as we are building our practices. So no matter what phase you're in, it's normal. It's part of it. Moving through it and learning to do that with support and compassion is going to help you every time that you start something new or experience a shift or change in your practice. So thank you, Vargas, for sharing all this.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, and thanks for allowing me to nerd out with you on this stuff and share the nerdiness with the community out here.
Yeah. We have more trainings upcoming, but we also, if you're interested in ever checking out our business school, you can get on the interest list. I have the web URL right here on the screen. Oh, and Christy says, this is exactly what I needed here today. Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so glad it was resonating with so many of you. And wherever you are in your phase of practice, there is no shame in that. We are here to support you through all of those phases, to celebrate with you, to be excited for new things, and also to help you prepare and be informed so that you can get to that place of confidence in finding the ease in these waves. So, Vargas, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Truly.
I love getting to share you with everyone. I think it's something that's different. You know, everyone has known us as the Kelly and Miranda team, but we've really grown, and we have a lot of coaches now that work with therapists. And this is the kind of stuff that is brought to the table to help clinicians really not just develop their skills as business owners, but as human beings and leaders, and how we want to show up in the world and in our lives and in our businesses. So I'm grateful for that information that you bring to us.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you all next time. Have a great rest of your day. Enjoy your phase.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.